Jesse, we need to brew.
This song grabbed me by my soul the first time that I heard it, and the grip that it had on the TikTok world is insane. I think that this is one of the first times that I've seen people come together, artists and non-artists, to just enjoy and appreciate art, and that's something really unique. People like art, but I think they have no idea where to start or how to get into it. And if you like the dark fantasy trend, there's a whole world out there for you to learn about. How often does this type of realist, gloomy, moody, romantic painting actually get its moment to shine? I think not enough. So today, we can appreciate some of that, and I want to make my own dark fantasy painting. We don't even need any of that AI stuff. We can use oil paints, we can use traditional techniques that have been used to make this type of stuff for hundreds of years, because this trend is a lot older than you think. Now, the first step to making any good piece of art, whether it's writing or it's painting or watching those weird Japanese cartoons on your computer, it's to feel. So we need to just check out some dark fantasy stuff and see what makes this aesthetic. Every dark fantasy video has this song. It has AI made paintings in the background. They all have this kind of heavy degree of film grain and of stylization that heavily resembles like these 80s VHS type films. It's kind of a mismatch of a lot of different aesthetics, but primarily this old school 80s horror one, and it often gets blended with kind of everything because it's just AI generated. Like, anyone can make this stuff. Good Lord. Hello. All right. I like this. I'm liking this dark fantasy. This is what I mean by it literally gets blended into everything. The only thing that's kind of the same is this heavy level of like film grain and stylization. It's heavily realistic though, which is kind of cool. I found a little guide here on how to make these AI generated images. So they're using prompts like dark fantasy, book cover, art, Dungeons and Dragons style drawing. I mean, that all, it makes sense. And then they're adding some sort of digital film grain to it in Lightroom. I have no idea how I'm supposed to get film grain in some sort of oil painting, but we'll deal with that when the time comes to it. This isn't art. There is no creativity or talent involved in making these images. There's no reason to gatekeep prompts. And I think if whatever you have to say about AI, these comment sections, they're not filled with people whining about how AI is destroying everything. They're just people who are really enjoying these images. And with this sort of mindset that's like, hey, this isn't art. We're just doing stuff. We're just making this cool stuff because people love it and people love to look at it. And anyone can come here and make this. I think that's actually kind of cool. Like, this is an art movement that literally anyone can just kind of hop into and make their own version of, which is, it's interesting. This is classic dark fantasy stuff here. We got the Shrek's back. Wait, how do we get back to Shrek? This is not, or this is normal dark fantasy stuff. It's very Elden Ring-y. I love these trees and these forest scenes. Very compressed values, by the way. What I mean by that is like, it's not super bright and then like pure black. You don't see like white and black on a lot of these. It's very middle of the value spectrum. So everything's like kind of in this like darker gray section. This one has this like, this is white, but if you compare it to the white of the comment section, it's really kind of the whole thing is gray, but it still has this great feeling of luminosity to it, which is really interesting. It's beautiful. I love these leaves in the background. Just get lost in the music. That's me. Also me. Also me. Still me. Dark fantasy Skyrim, but then it's just a bunch of normal dark fantasy. Skyrim is kind of dark fantasy, so are there even goblins in Skyrim? I mean, this isn't Skyrim at all. That's just straight up like Conan. All right, finally we find like a Khajiit here. That at least makes it a little bit Skyrim. So this one is interesting, actually. I just found this. This is not an AI generated painting. This is a real oil painting. I've seen this one before. I can't remember who made it though, so I am gonna reverse image search this. I'm gonna screenshot it. Passage of the Monks to Mount Athos by Herman Korodi. This is incredible. And the cool thing about this, look, this is like a ultra wide, like phone wallpaper composition. You never see that type of stuff in these old paintings. It's always much more horizontal or a little bit closer to like 4x3 square paintings. But you can see just all these nice thick textural brush strokes in here that's catching the glare off of the canvas as it builds up to this scene that pushes out to this giant godlike landscape. And there's so much above the figures too, right? Because we're coming up to the heavens, and this is a S shape that moves up this composition and up and into the clouds. Those clouds continue that S shape up. I mean, this is just prime reference for dark fantasy, and this is 1905. So this guy was way ahead of his time. All right, let's see what else is on here. And then we go to like the actual AI generated stuff, which still, I'm just a sucker. I mean, this totally reminds me of like Night of Flowers. We can pull that one up. Night of Flowers by George Rushengros. I'm definitely pronounced that wrong. I can't even pronounce drawing right. I don't know what you don't expect anything of me. This is not dark fantasy. This is light fantasy. All right. This is the totally opposite end of the spectrum. But this guy is he's the ascended Giga Chad, and our knight over here, he is the incel knight. We got a knight pondering his orb. It's me pondering my orb. Real genuine graphic design. There's so many different like aesthetics and styles that somehow still fit under this category. I mean, this is actually just, besides the AI weirdness in his head here, I don't even know if we're looking at the front or the back. This is just really beautiful. Like if you just totally forget what you're looking at, it's just a beautiful abstract painting. And watch as we slip to a more stylized version, right back into like a really heavily realism version, and then kind of our classic dark fantasy. I mean, they're all under this umbrella, but there's so much variance, and the only thing tying them together is what? The subject matter and some film grain? I mean, this doesn't even have that much film grain. The whole feeling of this dark fantasy trend, it just feels so familiar, like a game or a movie that I can't quite remember, but I know it in my heart. Maybe a past life, I don't know, but it's comforting. And then we're right back to Mario Dark Fantasy. I mean, it's fun. Like it's 80s. I think like that 80s aesthetic, like retro, whatever that even means, like somehow is tying this together. Pondering the Nether portal after I got home from work in the 60s and yelled at my wife. And after I enter the Nether with my iron armor and my diamond scaled armor versus the Wither, that actually looks pretty good. This is good Minecraft dark fantasy. And these guys have killed me so many times. Steve's got that jawline though. That's something we got to pay attention to. We need the jawline. My For You page now, and it's TikTok is really, I feel like it's been way worse with the ads and stuff lately. I try not to like rot my brain on there. And my For You page in October 2023, this is true. I thought I was too late on this, but apparently this trend is still going, and we have our Minecraft guys here too. So true. And my fellow hooded brother, I love these. Your journey is ended. Where are you taking your last breath? We got here in our flowers, our knight resting on his shoulder, holding his rose. Full moon under the blue sky in the valleys, or in the piles of bodies and flowers and skulls. Just another night washed away to the sands of time. This one I love. This is a lot like Berserk. It's got this deep black and white dark feeling, this overly detailed sense to it. Man, these are intimidating to go up against and try painting my own. This one might be me. I like how he's slumped. I'd be slumped like that sometimes. Look at the ornament and the fake frame on this one. It's so funny to see AI generate decorative patterns, and it's all over the armor too. This one is just spectacular. And our final one, resting in a circular composition, dawn or maybe dusk, shining the last bit of light before these cold valleys take over our night for the rest of time. Dark fantasy or bright fantasy. All right. So this is the other end of the spectrum, and maybe there's a whole nother bright fantasy arc for me in the future. I gotta get white fabric. Jake, where'd you get this robe? Oh, thank you for asking. That's a really great question. I was hoping someone would ask that. Actually, I made it myself. You see, I made this robe, and you should tell me good job, Jake, because I didn't know how to sew. I actually didn't sew. I glued it together. I mean, this is a big part of dark fantasy. Is this knight and armor and these monsters, or at least the feeling of this, but it also feels serene at the same time too. Like, these guys are scary, but for some reason they're comforting, and that doesn't really make sense. But there's a lot of clashing things, and they're all just tied together so well in dark fantasy. That's something really unique. Yeah, like this. I mean, the weird thing is that this doesn't look incredibly uncanny. Like, it doesn't look bad at all, even though these are like the strangest faces ever. Hello. I mean, all right, this is a little bit on the ear shifting into his arm. Oh man. We're getting some Freddy Fazbear stuff too. Got Buzz Lightyear casting spell. Oh, Jesus Christ. What is that? All right, never mind. I'm terrified. No, Woody. Woody, what did they do to you? Woody, no. Bro is looking good. Bro, it's busting it down sexual style. Look at him. Get over here. And now I think we need to make our own composition. Do the fundamentals. This is brought to you by Jake. Listen, I don't feel good about doing this part either, right? Some jobs just need to get done. Get you wrapped up. I know that was a traumatic experience. Hey, look at this. This is the overhead drawing camera setup, so you guys can actually see what I'm drawing without all this distortion and stuff. Hello over there in the new $1 million studio. Thank you, CopyZilla, for the joke. I think we need to start doing some sketches and just writing down some ideas for our composition and what we want. So maybe the first way to do that, we could just write down some ideas. I'm just gonna have to put down a bunch of ideas, everything that comes to mind, until something clicks and I like it. As far as like actually building compositions, I think it's really important to look at people that you like and see how they did it. Everyone will tell you, just copy the masters if you want to learn how to draw or paint, but that's really not good advice at all, because you can just look at a Bouguereau painting, right, and just try to copy it. You will never, ever, ever get there, and Bouguereau wouldn't have gotten there himself either, right? When we look at paintings, we have to understand the process that they took to get there, and this is what is not talked about by far the most. People think that they can just sit down and just paint something beautiful, but art is really hard and nobody does that. Very, very few people. I mean, it's a little bit more common nowadays that people can just sit down and make a great painting. But those are people who have been working in like the illustration industry for 30 years and they have a huge visual library. Pretty much everyone, especially the painters of the past, it's a long process. It starts with thumbnail sketching just like this. And then we can build up to slightly medium-sized sketching. Then we're getting references, we're getting models, we're taking photos nowadays. Even great artists like Rockwell took photos. And then we're starting to do color studies, and then we're doing maybe medium-sized studies, and then we're going to blow it up to one final big study, one final big painting after a final drawing is done and transferred onto the canvas. So the idea that people will tell you, oh, just go draw something, just go copy the masters, and then you sit down and you just try to copy the end result. You're painting shadows on the cave wall. Art is made through a series of very laborious processes, and that kind of is hard to accept. It sucks. Everyone wants art to be like romantic and fun, but it's just really not how it works. Some sort of like knight pondering his orb. I need a knight pondering something. Maybe he's got one leg going that way, one leg going this way. Quality is the last of my concerns here. I'm just trying to think about how I can do this. Just not sure. And small sketches are the name of the game here, because I want to be able to just get as much down as possible. I mean, I'll get reference, I'll get an inspiration board, a mood board. What I care about most right now is just developing something that's interesting inside of 4 borders, interesting arrangement of shapes, and an interesting idea and feeling of the canvas. That's going to be, it's honestly one of the most difficult parts. If I can get a nice arrangement of shapes, then I can work out all the details. That's a matter of time. Well, in this one, we'll kind of have his torso facing this way, but his pelvis and his head are going to be pulling this way, like he's pulling away from something. And maybe in the background, we could have a second figure, maybe a female figure. I like this kind of feeling of stacking shapes here. One figure in the foreground, one figure in the background.
maybe we'll think about that.
I'm not feeling super inspired right now. Not a lot's coming to mind, so I want to make a little reference board of things that I like. Yeah, Frederick Layton just immediately took over my entire inspiration board. This guy is a dark fantasy king all the way back in the late 1800s. I mean, look at some of these. We have the sailor and the mermaid, the siren probably. And with this one too, we have the original clay models that Layton made for reference, and this is how he got the reference for stuff like this and why the dragon looks so goofy. But it's awesome. It looks so cool. As I come back to, I'm paying attention to these compositions, right? So we have a very strong central figure here who's very triangular, taking up about 3/4 most of the image. Look here too, all the shadows in this, because of the compressed or the darker value range, all the shadows are getting pushed down to black. There's very little information in any of these shadows. They just go straight to black. That's very interesting. This one is so similar to Gérôme's Diogenes painting. Look at the compositional similarities here of the Diogenes in his pot, the beggar on the side of the road, with Frodo in this one, but a little bit of a different theme here.
An idea that I like, and I'm just gonna spend some time trying to clean it up a little bit. It doesn't gotta look good or accurate or anything, but I want it to be at least legible to you guys. And to me too. All right, here's our big shapes. We have kind of the sweeping shape up to the top hood over here. We come down, here's where the bottom of the feet are gonna be. And now I just need to make sure that this is something that you would like to see in some sort of abstract art museum. There's no sense in trying to get a perfect look of a person or a robe or anything like that. You have to use reference for that type of stuff. If you aren't using reference for that type of stuff, you've probably been illustrating for 20 or 30 years and have a bunch of poses and faces memorized, essentially, or, sets of facial features and that type of design skills memorized. Way back in the 19th century, they didn't have that type of stuff memorized. They would do kind of really basic drawings like this, and then they would go and they would draw studies of people, and they would slowly piece those together and paint more and more parts of the canvas or little studies until they kind of had a full plan that they could execute on for the final one. I'd have to work out a few more details if I'm going to do an oil. The nice thing about doing sketches in digital, and there's a reason why everyone does them nowadays, even if you're a traditional artist, is because if you need to resize something, you can just grab it, select it, and resize it. And if you think that the old masters wouldn't have used digital, you are crazy. They used every tool they could that made the job easier. They had tremendous understanding. That's never to be sacrificed, but they definitely would have used digital. Okay, so here's a little sketch that it's all right. It's a little bit broken, but that's all right. So we have our knight here who's pondering. He's looking out at his helmet over here, and he's thinking, should I go back to war? What should I do? Do I have to serve this lord? We have our robed figure in the background here who will be wearing some sort of a red robe, and this will be a bluish background, so lots of contrast there. And that robe's going to come down and spill out, and it's going to be under him too, so he's kind of intertwined with the red robe. That's maybe his blood ties to the empire or something like that. That's keeping him in war. And he's going to be, I think, probably shirtless, because I like to just render anatomy. That's something I like to do. Maybe we'll have some black pants on him. He's got this. Maybe we need a sword or something. Maybe that could go off like this. I'm not sure if that's good for the composition or not yet. We'll have to make some decisions here. He'll be sitting on some rocks in the foreground. These are little stones that I took from one of the AI images. Actually, I liked how they did the stones in the foreground. We have a lot of space to fill in the background here. That makes me a little bit nervous. I don't know. I think let's bring this into Photoshop now. We have a really good idea, and we can kind of resize some stuff and do color mock-ups in digital.
I want to keep fleshing out this reference board here. This is a painting by Devin Corwin, a really amazing guy. I took a mentorship with him a few years ago. Just very nice graphic design. I like those red colors. That's what I'm trying to think of. Definitely got to pull one over from my Dean Cornwell pictures. Cornwell's this amazing kind of 1920s or so illustrator. Let's put this one down here. And he has these great graphic shapes, this really strong compositional sense, really nice use of light and simplified tones. He doesn't have all these different levels of light. You can tell that things are put down in kind of nice patches of different values. So he's choosing kind of 5 total levels of light for the whole painting, and he puts them down very selectively and uses that to design things very well and save himself a lot of work, because he's an illustrator. He has to get stuff done. I think we can take some of the gloomy, moody sense from these Cornwell paintings, even though he didn't do a lot of knights or medieval stuff. It's the same vibe, but kind of just different subject. Look at what I just found too. We have a little sketch for one of these as well. So this is probably like a middle stage sketch. So after some drawings have been done and really simplified tones, but everything is here in the sketch. It just needs to be expanded upon. They need to get like more fleshiness, some models and stuff for the rendering, but pretty incredible how much you can do with so little. And that's what's amazing about all these guys. These Solomon paintings are without a doubt, they're just straight up dark fantasy in the late 1800s, maybe early 1900s. I think late 1800s. It doesn't get any more dark fantasy than this. I mean, there's nothing to even say. I mean, these guys have been doing this for so long. I love this painting. This was my phone wallpaper for a long time. He has this great lance here, and there's this serpent claw. He's stabbing into their head, and he's stepping on top of it as he has this queen in his left hand that he's just hoisting into the air. I mean, everything about this is just incredible. And look how this arm flows out of her body. We have these rhythms coming from her dress into her arm and then into her hand, and that's giving into this rhythm, which is going to return and circle in. And we have decorative elements like this, whatever this is, or this drapery. I've always loved these loading screens from Mountain Blade Bannerlord too. I think that they're just spectacular. They have this nice sculptural sense of painting and modeling. They have this really nice lighting. The overall really great composition too. It's well composed, sweeps down from right to left or left to right. I also found this one too in the Pinterest search. This is, I don't think AI. I found it amongst a bunch of AI, but to me this looks like a Russian, some sort of contemporary Russian illustration painting. I think I've seen similar ones, so if it's AI, I got fooled. Speaking of that, somebody sent this image in my Discord community. You guys should join it, by the way. It's a really cool community. Lots of cool free resources that I put out there, reference photos and stuff like that. And this one stumped me because it looks like AI. Like, look at the hands, they're very elongated and stuff. It feels like AI, but I mean, look, this is glare on the photo, right? Like some of these little particles, they look like glare on the varnish, and there's clear like textural paint marks here. Look at this right here. That's like a palette knife coming in and scooping paint onto the canvas. So this one really stumped me. At first, I was like, okay, it's AI. But then I looked closer and I really couldn't tell. I mean, it's just crazy. I had to do a reverse image search, and finally someone pointed out that they found the original creator and it was AI generated. This stuff is just, it's getting out of control, man. It's so wild. And there is some weird stuff in it, but the old test of can it draw hands or not, it doesn't really work anymore. Like, it can draw pretty much all anatomy just fine. I mean, there's always a little bit of jank and stuff, but 99.9% of people aren't going to notice that the serratus muscle doesn't have enough insertions on it or something like that. It doesn't really matter. And we can look too. These are all of my AI generated reference photos that I just took off Pinterest. Like, the hands are fine, guys. Like, this AI stuff, it's come a long way, and it's going to keep coming a long way. I'm kind of AI neutral. This isn't a video about AI, but I do like to look at this stuff because, I mean, if I showed you these images and I didn't tell you they were AI, you might have some really strong stance. You would probably like them. I mean, they're just well composed, well designed images, and they're fun to look at. And if you like art, if you look at art and you think it's fun to look at, then it probably has some level of merit. I think that being said, I think we got a really nice amount of references here, and that should be pretty inspiring. So let's just hop into Photoshop. You guys gotta understand that this type of stuff is not my area of expertise. That's why I'm doing it, because yeah, I do the realist paintings and I do portraiture and I do the studies, but if you actually want to be like the old masters for composition and like many of these great 19th century painters, you have to understand how to actually use those academic skills in order to do something, and that's what I really want to get good at and master, and that takes a lot of time, and I have to really put myself out here and make some bad drawings, and we will get there eventually. But how folds work specifically from my imagination. It's just not the type of stuff that I've had the reason to study, but now going out there and experimenting with this type of stuff, I can go and study it, and because I have somewhat of a stronger academic background, I think that I can learn this stuff pretty quickly once I get there. So this will be a little bit of a journey in revealing my weak spots, and hopefully we'll be able to see how I can conquer that as we move on. Definitely going to need some reference to see how this arm distributes its weight straight down and how that shoulder drops with it. This looks okay, but it's certainly not right. It's just one big learning process. I mean, I'm certainly not the best. I've only been doing this for like 5 years, actually. I started from complete scratch 5 years ago. I can throw up one of my old drawings. It takes a long time. It takes decades. And all the artists that I'm going to reference, those paintings are from the middle of their careers, at least, if not the later stages of their careers. So those guys, it took them, 10, 20 years. I mean, they learned in the academies. It probably took them, 10 years or so, 5, 10 years. And then after that, it took them another 10, 20 years to really develop these high levels of mastery and fluidity in their compositions. And if you ever think that, oh, I'm just going to learn art and then I'll be done. No, I mean, that's horrible. Why would you ever want to do that? Because that's what art is. It's just struggling and learning. And if you don't like that now, then you're probably never going to like it. And that's okay. It might not be for you. In the references, we got, see, like a top left light. This is actually a top right light, but behind the central figure. Left facing light. We have a top left kind of strong light coming in. This is a very kind of overcast diffuse light without any hard shadows, and you're going to see that in the Howard Pyle as well. In our Dean Cornwell, he uses a stronger light, at least in this one, and this is a pretty strong light too. So we have hard shadows on one edge and light lights on the other edge, even though it's in general darker. I like the high contrast streaming in light. We see it in this one too with our Mr. Berserked. Okay, so I think a strong light coming from like top left, top right. Maybe we should try something like that. So this is what a top left light source, roughly just quickly blocking in would look like. Should maybe try a different one just to see some different options that we have. So on this one, very similar, but I'm going to have the light kind of coming from more above. So it's going to be whatever faces very downwards. So anything that faces kind of straight down, like under the chin, maybe under the arm or the back side of this helmet here, that's going to get shadow. It's very similar to the other one, but we're just going to be a little bit more picky, a little bit less shadows overall. I pulled in all of some of these references that I chose, some of the AI ones, some of the real ones, Solomon J. Solomon, 2 AIs. This is Edmund Blair Layton, I think. And then this one is Lawrence Alma Tadema. And we're just going to steal the colors from these and put them on our painting. And the lightest points on here are probably her skin tones. So we'll try to find like kind of 5 colors or values or whatever in this. So we have, this is probably the lightest point in the painting, her really fair skin on that central focus point. And as we get darker, we're going to kind of move towards his skin tones. That one's kind of more in the middle, 50 out of 100. Okay, I did the thing. I think I overcomplicated it. Let's try to apply this to our painting. You guys are weird. I posted this on my Instagram story, and a lot of you guys started replying to me saying that you liked this one, and that was weird to me because I thought that this bottom right one was such an obvious upgrade over everything else. And a lot of you even said you liked this top left one because it's like the most night-like, despite it being so like sickly, which maybe fits the dark fantasy thing. That really confused me. So I put out a poll, and these two are dead even tie. I mean, really shocked me. I was very surprised. And this one, not that far behind. Nobody likes bottom left at all. But I think kind of this is just a better version of the bottom left. So I've gone ahead here and I just combined all 3 elements from each one. I really, I took the clouds and put them in here, but I gave it these colors. Maybe we could push that a little bit harder. I don't know. We'll see. I took these blue ones. So I think that people like this one because, one, The red is warmer, right? This is a warm orangey red, and this is a cool bluish red. This one's a little bit more bluish too. So this warm red against the blue background, that adds more contrast, which is more interesting. The background's darker too. I think that also just kind of pushes the contrast in an interesting way. So I took some of that, I split the difference on basically all of these. And then I like the foreground, this kind of purpley color in the foreground. So I pulled in some of that, some of the darker values on the rocks. I think I took everything from each one that was best. And I think this is where we're gonna wind up. This is what we gotta do a sketch of. Let's go. 9 by 16, 7 inches. That means 4 inches. I don't need a measuring tape. I know what 4 inches looks like. It's a dark fantasy style of preparing canvas. Okay, listen, I know that this sketch, it's not the most beautiful looking sketch in the world, but I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm not gonna spend hours on something just to show off for you guys. Well, actually, the next day I did actually have to come back in here and bring all the colors down in value a little bit. We need to darken up, make it more dark fantasy, and bring more of those blues into there because the color combos work a little bit better. And I know it still looks pretty humble, but you can refer to past Jake for the rest of that comment. We're trying to make a real painting here. We're trying to be realistic and be practical and efficient with our time. And this is the way that starts. I'm sure of it. And I have plenty of examples to show you from the history. These are composition sketches for students competing for the Prix de Rome, which was the biggest art competition in the French academies in the 19th century. So these are some of the best art students in the world at the time, and this is what their sketches looked like. Art is a little bit about mystery and deception, and social media only makes that much worse. So don't hold yourself back because you don't think you're good enough to try something new. And that means we're ready for the next stage. So on the next episode of Jake Don't Dark Fantasy, I think we'll get feedback from a professional painter and we'll start to maybe shoot some references and make studies of the individual pieces of this. That way we can figure out how these parts click together, and then we can start to work on a final larger painting or larger study. And then that would maybe require more studies, and you get it kind of snowballs until you have something larger. Tune in, subscribe, that's coming up. Also, yes, this is cadmium pigment all over my hands. The last comment section, they told me it's fine, it's safe to eat, and cadmium's good for you, so lead and cadmium, just absorb it into your skin and it'll be fine. If I die, just go at Robert Brown 47, that's 1947, that's the year he was born, in the comment section, and blame him, okay?